there are some MPs like Kate Osborne, who's on the Women in Select Committee, and
Yeah.
indeed Caroline Noakes, who seem um, to have just lost their minds on this issue. They really just aren't listening to distinguished pediatricians, educators, psychologists. They're listening to Stonewall, and they really need to
Yeah,
get out of that bubble.
it is. Schools will have a duty to facilitate, not have a duty rather, to facilitate a child who wants to change gender. Teachers and pupils will not have to address children by their pronouns. Children who change gender identity will be barred from contact sports with the opposite sex, and single-sex facilities will also be protected. Kathleen, speaking as a philosopher and a columnist for Unheard, what's your take on this guidance? Is it sensible? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm very glad to see it. It's been a long time coming, and I think it is really good, actually. It's clear that schools don't have to just capitulate to whatever a student is telling them, because it might not be in the interests of the student. And that's the most important thing to realize in this whole discussion, is that if you have a child's best interests at heart, then you should think very, very seriously about what's called socially transitioning, which means going along with identity claims, pronouns, and then in some schools going into different toilets and different changing rooms and different sports teams. It's not necessarily in the best interest of that child. And clinicians are saying this now loud and clear, so schools need to listen. It's also not in the best interests of the rest of the school, depending on the case. But, you know, if there's a sports team involved, for instance, it's clearly not in the best interest of girls to have a boy on a biological boy on their sports team for safety reasons and also for competitive reasons, for instance. And there's just so many issues like that. So I'm really glad to see this, because I think it's like a massive step in the right direction.
And of course, I'm being monumentally thick and mildly insensitive because, of course, you were a professor at Sussex University and involved in a massive row.
Yeah.
In fact, you were effectively driven out of Sussex University because of this appalling behaviour towards you. Because you basically, well, in my view, spoke a lot of common sense about this issue. I mean,
Well, that's
this
just, yeah,
guidance.
that's a sign of the fact of the climate that we've had. So it's been impossible to talk about these things properly without getting enormous amounts of abuse. Um, Even though you have a perfectly reasonable point of view, clinically backed up and is in the interest of children. And I'm really glad to see the pendulum swinging towards a more open discussion of the pros and cons.
Could you see the government issuing similar guidance to universities? It has less sway, as it were, in terms of directing
No.
universities in this way.
Yes, I think that would be a whole different kettle of fish, because, I mean, the government, no one can really make up their minds whether students are adults officially or whether there's some kind of parental in loco parentis kind of responsibility of universities. And I think that would have to be clarified. But in principle, there's a big difference between the guidance you should have for people before the age of 18 and ones you should have for those at the age of majority. In Labour, Bridget Phillipson coming out and saying that she welcomed the advice, which is a very positive development as far as I'm concerned, as someone who would vote Labour. But I mean, there are some MPs like Kate Osborne, who's on the Women in Select Committee, and indeed Caroline Noakes, who seem to have just lost their minds on this issue. They really just aren't listening to distinguished pediatricians, educators, psychologists. They're listening to Stonewall, and they really need to get out of that bubble.
It is yeah, I mean, there was a survey the other day that said the key to happiness is to be in control of your life. I mean, I'll do a bit of work maybe on Christmas Day, just because if I want to knock off a few emails in my inbox or something like that. But I'm lucky enough to be able, to a certain extent, to choose to work from home or not, unless I'm coming in to present a radio show. And obviously I'm in such huge demand at Times Radio. That's now almost a daily occurrence. But that's enough about me. Taking on Charlotte Ivers in the World Revolves Around Me stakes there. Let's talk about Riz. It's the Oxford Word of the Year. The Times has a list. They've topped it with the hot equerry Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Thompson. Their words, not mine, though he is rather easy on the eye, it says here. He shone at this year's coronation. Can you, given our high-minded conversation earlier, Kathleen, can you bear to stoop down and give us some recommendations for your Riz list?
Well, I had to look up
Montesquieu.
hot equerry for a start. I had to look up Riz.
Oh, you should be a high. You should
lot
be.
of things
You should be a
for
high court
research
judge.
here.
You should be a high court judge.
And
Perfect qualifications.
your producer did not say it was politicians with
No,
Riz that you were going to ask me about, which has completely narrowed my field down.
Kathleen, you can have anyone. Anyone.
Oh, can I?
I said you could have Montesquieu.
Oh God.
You could have.
Well,
You could have Thomas Hobbes.
Montesquieu's got massive Riz.
Oh, there you go. Thomas Hobbes.
Yeah, okay. Well, if I didn't realise that the whole of the history of ideas, then I would say, Immanuel Kant, enormous Riz.
Really?
Hegel,
Interesting.
Riz up to the eyeballs.
Oh, Hegel, sort of Austrian Riz. Anyone else? Any contemporary commentators?
Well, I did agree that Angela Rayner has got Riz. I think Kemi, given that I really approve of her guidance, I can say that she's now moved up the Riz stakes.
Yeah.
But it's just charisma, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yes.
I'm hoping. I've laid all that on the line. It doesn't have to
be, it doesn't have to be a sexy thing. It can just be somebody who's got charisma.
No, I'm not revealing my crush on any of these people I've just mentioned, apart from possibly Kant.
Our cities are emptying out earlier this year because work from home is basically morphing into kind of shop from home and, do all your chores while you're apparently working from home. How are you treating the work from home morphing into the festive holidays issue?
No, I think there's a lot of negativity about hybrid working, and I can see why businesses might be not fans of it. But I do think that it does allow people to have a better work-life balance in some cases. And at this time of year, who wants to be in London with a massive stressful commute in front of them? The weather's terrible, everybody's ill, everyone's coughing on the trains as well. That's the other thing. If you have to commute, then you are then exposed to all these germs you're going to take into your Christmas dinner. So I think it makes perfect sense to me that you'd stay at home at this point.